dunia sekarang, dan saya percaya sidang dan wacana segar yang berlaku dalam sidang-sidang seperti ini akan membantu bukan sahaja Malaysia dalam merangka kebijakan baru, tetapi juga rakan-rakan di peringkat antarabangsa, khususnya ASEAN, untuk merenung berdasarkan pemikiran rakan-rakan yang punyai kekuatan melihat isu tidak terlalu terikat dengan kepentingan-kepentingan tempatan dan negara masing-masing. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here. The theme is Interregnum. I hope it is not Purgatorio. Interregnum can be Purgatorio, betul. We can achieve Paradiso, but we should leave the Inferno. So I look forward to, of course, engaging you and probably grasp some of your key ideas. More positive, more hopeful, other than dealing with the series of crises that you observe in the world. I'm not a pessimist. Therefore, I choose to discuss and deliberate issues on policies that's more hopeful. There's too much good news that we should share, and those with the propensity to exert influence, give positive ideas, should exert themselves forcibly and not be dragged by the forces, hypocritical forces, or inconsistent in their views that continue to condemn our societies, particularly in the issues of war, climate problems, migration in these post-normal times. I refer to, for example, areas of progress and cooperation, which is crucial, particularly in the emerging economies and developing world. Trade, investment, emerging technologies are now, unfortunately, again, increasingly weaponized by the competing world powers. For major and small powers alike today, we are confronted with a strategic landscape compounded with greater complexities and an even more treacherous geopolitical terrain to navigate. The geostrategic horizon ahead is overcast with ominous signs of foreboding, foreshadowing the critical risks, hazards, and potential catastrophes in our path that we ignore only at our peril. Last year, when I addressed the APR on this very stage, I spoke about how geopolitical and geostrategic developments have overshadowed some regional mechanisms and multilateral frameworks. Today, a mere 10 months later, 10 months? I hope your calculation is right. Now, 10 months later, I'm doubling down on my doubts and misgivings about the world's faith in these mechanisms and the international system. This is a system which was designed in the post-war era to ensure peace and stability, one that held much promise in the rhetoric but proven to be a dismal failure in the delivery. For instance, instead of peace and stability around the world, more people are dying on battlefields, being forced from their homes, or in need of life-saving aid than in recent memory. Despite our efforts and various international mechanisms, the pursuit of peace is failing. Indeed, it seems to be no longer about maintaining peace, but about preventing the worst. Now, distinguished delegates, the preponderance of containment strategies and the shaping of alliances motivated by competing visions are redrawing the contours of our regional order. It is cultivating an attitude of utter abandonment of values of inclusivity, empathy, and compassion, compounding the likelihood of entirely eclipsing the already disrupted peace and prosperity, not just in the Asia-Pacific, but for our global society. Constant discussions and speculation on choosing sides is not only counterproductive, but will only add to the brewing cauldron of mistrust and suspicion. Of late, Malaysia has been perceived as tilting to one side in a so-called strategic pivot from the other side. This is not only an oversimplification, but a gross misperception of national interests and character. The truth is, Malaysia was, is, and will be on the side of Malaysia. We are fiercely independent. That is to say, we refuse to be defined by how major powers see the world, and Malaysia will continue to strive for our national and strategic interests on our own terms. Malaysia stands for peace and progress, fellow feeling, and above all, abiding adherence to international law and cooperation. In this vein, Malaysia maintains a strong and fruitful relationship with both China and the United States. At the same time, Malaysia will continue to pursue productive and meaningful relations with our other partners, whether they be our long-standing strategic and comprehensive strategic partners or friends in the global south. Malaysia has a proud history of being part of the non-aligned movement during the Cold War. In remaining faithful to the principle of non-alignment, we have proven that the pursuit of dynamic neutrality is not only feasible, but highly desirable. Speaking of the United States and China, I would be remiss if I did not mention that we mark respective milestones with both countries this year. 10 years ago, Malaysia and the United States upgraded our bilateral relationship into a strategic partnership. I've often reiterated the importance and value of US-based foreign direct investment into Malaysia, especially in high-tech sectors. The functionality of the relationship is a testament to the enduring nature of our ties. This year too, Malaysia celebrates the 50th anniversary of ties with China, our largest trading partner, a key investor and a close bilateral and multilateral partner. The progress that China has made in the past decade, especially the vast improvement in the quality of life of hundreds of millions of its people, is nothing short of spectacular. I look forward to a visit of my colleague, Premier Lee Chiang, to Kuala Lumpur in the next few weeks, or fortnight to be precise. While maintaining the balance between our relationship with key partners, it is an important part of Malaysia's approach to the world. There are situations that call for unhesitating and unequivocal intervention. I'm speaking here of war crimes, of flagrant atrocities committed in the killing fields under the pretext of self-defense or settler colonialism, which is nothing short of a systematic campaign of genocide to displace an entire population of indigenous population. Now, the Israeli occupation of Palestine is a scourge on our collective histories in the conduct of nations. The Palestinians live oppressed and besieged while we are alive and free, limited in our influence and power, but sovereign and free. Malaysia is no major power, make no mistake. But we will use our freedom to support the Palestinians' fight for theirs. The humanitarian crisis we see today is not an abstract disaster. We cannot stand idly and allow this to be yet another chapter of mass killings and displacement that furnishes the historical volume of atrocities that have been committed, recognized, and then tragically but conveniently ignored. We have consistently voiced our concerns about the reluctance of the United States and the West to apply pressure on Israel. However, it's important to acknowledge positive developments. Within the constraints of the US political system in the election year, President Joe Biden has recently expressed growing impatience with his Israeli counterpart. He has also begun to push for an acceptance of a proposal for a ceasefire in exchange for the release of hostages. We welcome these early signs of change in America's approach towards the conflict. We hope that the United States will keep re-evaluating its approach and hasten an end to the killings and carnage. I've been often asked by friends in Europe and the States and recently Japan, the Japanese Prime Minister, because of my personal engagement with Hamas leaders. I've informed him and colleagues, and may I reiterate the point, that the engagement is consistent to secure peace, to suggest that they accept the initiative by the Arab League and colleagues, the OIC and the international community. And I am pleased to say that in my last meeting with them, in my recent communications, they seem to be more amenable to accepting these proposals for an amicable resolution, permanent ceasefire, and accept a two-state solution. Not such in implicit terms, but by accepting the Arab League formulations. We are still waiting for the response by Israel because the belligerence and the bombings continue. Ladies and gentlemen, the divergence between the global north and global south are no longer about development, but rather distinctly ideological, experiential, and perpetual. Opposing perspectives in geopolitics, global threats and challenges have created deep-seated friction between the two poles. In this interregnum, we no longer agree to disagree. Instead, we disagree, we can contradict, and we clash. These differences have transformed the global south from a mere term to one that defines the developing world, molding it into a strategic configuration of growing significance. The global south now represents not just the pursuit of prosperity, but the driver of an emerging global prosperity and growth. In the battle for inclusion, it represents the reclaiming of a voice not to be ignored in the international order. We see a reflection of this in the urgent call for restructuring the United Nations. Malaysia is steadfast in its view that a comprehensive reform and expansion of the United Nations Security Council is necessary and must ensure equitable and fair regional representation to reflect current realities. While the shortcomings of the United Nations will be our collective albatross to carry, the time is now to push for an inclusion and acknowledgement of diverse strategic contexts around the world. Indeed, there is precedence. Just last year, we witnessed the inclusion of the African Union into the G20, pointing to greater global South mobilization to come in a trajectory of transformation at a pace as yet unprecedented. We are cognizant of how Global South narratives today have introspective and empowered undertones which resonate deeply with Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, 9 years into our community, ASEAN is in a position of strength to embrace the future with confidence and vigor. In the political realm, ASEAN has served the region well, being the primary forum for dialogue, diffusing disputes between countries, and ensuring regional stability. At the same time, as the region's default convening hub for diplomacy, ASEAN has become an indispensable part of adjusting to regional institutional fluxes. In the economic realm, ASEAN has emerged as a dynamic and rapidly evolving economic hub, resilient in the face of mounting challenges. Favorable demographics, industrialization, and urbanization trends, and technological advances, and now with energy transition, digital transformation, we will increasingly see ASEAN as an economic powerhouse by 2040. In these times of great uncertainty, it is imperative to redouble our efforts within ASEAN towards strengthening ASEAN to be the key platform in managing regional affairs. We need ways to deliver on its aspirations. It must start with addressing the underutilization of ASEAN's mechanisms. ASEAN Regional Forum, the ASEAN Plus meetings, and the East Asia Summit, which has been celebrated for its convening power in the past, but now appear to plod along by fact of existence. It should also be anchored on the fact that ASEAN's future development evolves alongside its member states, their national interests, and what we can collectively achieve together. Now, as Malaysia prepares for the chair in 2025, we will strive to lead with moral character, as stressed upon the principles of Malaysia Madani and the general ASEAN consensus. This entails a civil and inclusive approach that celebrates interconnectivity. In upholding the enduring principles of non-alignment and cooperation, the Madani ideals demonstrate that it is possible to act respectfully while being an active player in shaping our region. Indeed, for Malaysia, ASEAN is more than a pillar of our foreign policy. It's also a force multiplier, a valuable asset to exercise our agency. Now, a difficult challenge we must contend is with the crisis in Myanmar, given the scale, displacement, and fighting, the scale of death, displacement, and fighting. The message ASEAN should convey must come from a unified voice. 5-point consensus. Failure to act when there is ample cause to believe that a member state is violating the spirit of the ASEAN Charter is a dereliction of our moral duty. Of course, ASEAN can only facilitate any efforts when the various parties in Myanmar are ready to do so. But this does not mean that we should not try multi-pronged and more creative tracks. And under President Jokowi's initiative last year, we even gave this understanding that member states with somewhat better relations, an opportunity to engage, should continue to engage and establish a trio. Malaysia, Laos, Malaysia, to continue a more aggressive engagement within that 5-point consensus agreed upon by ASEAN leaders. Among the various stakeholders in Myanmar, there are the nascent beginnings of a long and difficult conversations of what the future of their country will look like. This includes the possibility of a federation-like system. While it is not our place to decide what is best for the people of Myanmar, it is incumbent on us, friends and neighbors, to help facilitate what and where we can. As a friend and brother Southeast Asian nation of Myanmar, it is in this spirit which I reiterate that Malaysia consistently calls for an end to an ongoing violence, an end to the history of political marginalization against all the peoples of Myanmar, and the adherence to the 5-point consensus which was jointly reached in Jakarta in 2021. We will work with other ASEAN member states and dialogue partners who have influence on Myanmar to push for peace, more effective humanitarian mechanisms, and the eventual political engagement of all relevant stakeholders in that country. Distinguished ladies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the challenges we are confronted with are indeed formidable and wouldn't be easy to overcome. And I wouldn't dial back on the apprehension of the dire consequences should we choose to ignore the writing on the wall. Yet the challenges are not insurmountable. Inasmuch it is crucial to remind ourselves that Southeast Asia and the Asia Pacific is a region that remains resilient despite it all. Our realism as we approach these challenges and prospective solutions should not be steeped in pessimism. As a collective, we have the opportunity and, more importantly, the responsibility to seek solutions that can mitigate the risk of conflict while guiding us to a prosperous, sustainable, and just future. The discussions that you have had and will have in this Asia-Pacific Roundtable can be part of these efforts. Terima kasih. Thank you.